4069, student number 203755, and it is based off of social classes in education. The first area that I wanted to discuss would be Central London, as in Mayfair. You also have Hyde Park, which is a big park in the center of London. It has become a very big tourist attraction. There's also streets like Oxford Street, which are very closely similar to the higher class. You have stores such as John Lewis, Debenhams, and Pandora, which are mainly for the higher class society. Notting Hill, which is praised for being part of that higher class society, and a lot of the richer, higher class people live in houses in Notting Hill. It is very much praised for being that upper class. You also have shopping centers such as Harrods and Selfridges, which are mainly for the upper class society. They have stores such as Louis Vuitton, Michael Kors, Coach, all of the higher price brands, which are mainly for the higher class society. The second area I decided to look at was East London, specifically the borough of Newnham. Newnham is a centered community around what is best for the people, the education system, and their shopping centers are vastly different from those of Central London. The shopping centers in East London are very much working class. They have shops such as TK Maxx, New Look, Next, which are very much safer for middle class to shop at because they are able to afford all of the different things that are in there, and it is a lot better for their understanding. Also, the environment is completely different. You have to see that it's very community based and it's structured on the people that live there. A lot of the people that are in this community know each other, and it is very based on your culture. The observations that I have in both areas are vastly different from each other, such as the schools. In Central London, a lot of the schools are more private and they are more centered towards a higher class education. They want you to go from their school and go obviously through uni, through college, and that is the goal at the end of term. Whereas in East London, a lot of the schools are public and they are educational based, but they are not ran to the higher standard of those in Central London. The people in the area are vastly different. The people in Central London, you can tell, are from a higher class. They hold their standards up very well, and they are also very upput in their outfits. Whereas in East London, you will see a lot of people in sweatpants, in jackets, just normal everyday people. The social class levels, like I said, are vastly different. In Central London, you have more of a higher class mentality, whereas you go towards East London, it's more of a working class mentality. A lot of people get up and they commute to work, whereas in Central London, it is very shopping based and not a lot of people are going there for work. A lot of them are going there to shop unless you're a part of that working class community. Are both areas welcoming? I will have to say that East London is a lot more welcoming to the quote-unquote working class community because I am part of working class. It is very different walking around Harrods and Selfridges being a working class person because a lot of the different stores will look at you different and they won't really give you the time of day because they think you can't afford or won't afford any of the things they have in their store. Is there room for improvement? There are room for improvement for everything. In East London, there's room for improvement for cleaning up the debris off the floor. It is very different from Central London, whereas Central London, you have people walking around, picking up the trash, picking up the debris, and making sure everything looks nice and clean because it is that higher class setting, whereas East London, it's that lower or working class setting to where if there is debris on the floor, it's not going to really matter. Social conventions. Avis argues that although analytically we can separate relations of class from those of gender and race, and particularly they are intertwined, we are all positioned in relation to our class, gender, ethnicity, sexuality, and so on. This insert is explaining the fact that no matter if you come from a higher class or a working class, you are almost always going to stay in that higher or working class category. in England, it is very centralized on where you come from and the different aspects of your life. When linking it to education, you're trying to see the separation, and you can't separate from your class, because only working class can go to school and get that education because they can afford it, whereas a working class person wants to come out of college and go straight into work just so they can earn that income. Karl Marx theorized that society consists of two classes, a working class and a ruling class. For Marx, the working class are a group of people that share the same economic background and occupation. They consist of manual workers. The ruling class would be the higher class background, the people who own the business and are at home making the money, while the manual workers are in the stores, running the stores, being employees at the stores, and that is the working class, and that is shared across the entire spectrum of working class. You are there to help the economy, and you're there to make sure the economy thrives, and occupationally you are a construction worker, a grocery store worker, you work in department stores, you help maintain that business for the ruling class people, the people who are owning the businesses and making all of that money. And it solely connects to education, because working class go to school to get that degree to own that business, whereas manual workers, working class, don't go to school and they get the job straight out of college. Marxist says certain concepts are key to the understanding of Marxism, a political theory that has shaped the world for over 150 years. Key Marxist concepts are democratically the opposite to capitalism, and some believe have created a mentality of society that is very much them and us one, meaning that them would be the higher class society and us would be the working class society. The higher class society would be people who are educated and people who have gone to school and are generally of the wealthier class family, whereas the people of working class do believe that they are us. They are the people who are just beneath the higher class society. Neo-Marxisms believe the economic system says a wealthy class of owners and a poor class of workers, again connecting to higher class being the wealthy class because they can go and get that education, and the poorer class of workers are the people who are in the stores, again running them and making sure that they function. Labeling, as noted by Sub, the British are sensitive to the impacts of accents, especially East London and Birmingham, whereas in Newcastle and Glasgow are referred to having ugly or solitary accents. Do accents matter in social class? Yes, accents would matter in social class, because if you are part of a social class that has an ugly or not attractive accent, whereas the higher social class have a very posh and professional way of speaking, and if you don't meet that criteria, then it would be very hard to enter that society, because it is solely based on how you look, how you act, and the difference in the society. So I would say accents do matter in social class, and it connects to education, because if you have an ugly or lower class accent, that they would say education, they would look down upon. They would not expect that person to be in education because of the social impact that there is, because everything is solely based on upper and lower class. Capitalism largely shapes the educational system. Without the educational system, the economy would be a massive failure, as without education, we are without jobs, unemployment, which keep the economy and society moving, meaning that education is so important. Whether you are from a working class family or from a higher class family, you can have that way of moving society, because you need to have people to fulfill those jobs, whether they are manual workers and they are taking a job straight out of college, they are moving the society, they're making everything move to this newer society, and without education, you will not have that. You will not have people going into education and taking these jobs, and these jobs of higher power, whereas working class comes down, gets that university degree, and goes into the higher class jobs for them. Marxism believed that economy, conflict, class, poor, rich, and middle class, and inherited class produce conflict, meaning that the economy makes so much conflict between the rich, lower, and middle class. It is very well documented because the difference between the classes, a lot of the rich people are solely based on themselves, and the poor people feel like the rich are taking from them, and it's really hard to kind of just come in order. And especially with education, students believe that they are going into debt because of them being a working class family, because they can't just afford to pay £9,000 in tuition, whereas a higher class family could just come out and pay that tuition outright. And it's easier for the higher class students to go to school without getting into debt, whereas working class students, they go to school, they get a degree, they get that education, but then they come out with all of this debt. And it is a lot harder for working class students to kind of flourish in society, with it being solely based on your social class. Parents must possess cultural capitalism. They must invest time and effort into transmitting cultural capital into their child, and the child must absorb cultural capitalism and transform it into educational success, meaning that if a child wants to go from working class to that higher class mentality and get that education from that higher class, they have to be able to act the part and absorb what it is to be part of that higher class mentality, because that would be the only way that that education would be possible. And it is documented by Jagger. Also, Sullivan asserts for two, educational credentials help to produce legitimate social inequalities in high-class individuals and are seen to diverse their place in social structure, meaning that people of higher class deserve to be seen as higher class, and they deserve their place in the economy, in the social structure. They deserve to be looked upon as that higher class and looked up to aspire to be what they are. Parents must... How do I feel? Should social class matter in education? I personally believe that social class should not matter in education. Looking at it from the UK perspective, I do see that social class does matter in everything that you do, whether you're a student, working class, higher class. Everything is solely based on the social class that you are in. And if you are part of a working class, it is not frowned upon, but it is harder for you to succeed in that higher class lifestyle of London, of England in general. And it is very much something that it is so installed into children's minds. Is there a visual difference between the two areas? As I've stated, there is a vast visual difference between Central London and East London. East London is more of, as I stated, a working class society, whereas Central London, Hyde Park, Oxford Street is very much a higher class society. There are two totally different areas, two totally different perspectives of life, and the working class aspire to be better than the higher class, or to be on that same level, and the higher class inspire to be better versions of themselves, and they inspire to make their money and to stay in that higher class society.